Hello and welcome to the BizInsight and BizContent installation video for Sage 100 ProvideX. If you are using Sage 100 Premium or Sage 100 with the DSD mirror, you should view the regular BizInsight and BizContent installation video. This video will walk you through an end-to-end installation of the BizInsight and BizContent products. The content installer version used in this video is 1.6. The BizInsight version used in this video is 5035.1, and the BizInsight Desktop Edition version is 1.2.7. On the server side, there are some basic requirements that must be satisfied. You have to perform the server-side install on the Sage 100 ProvideX data server. If the server is a domain controller, SQL and reporting services must be manually installed before running the content installer, and the server must have at least 6 gigabytes of space free. Let's start with an overview of the installation. A BizInsight and BizContent installation is comprised of the following steps. The first and most important point is that the server-side installation must be done on the Sage 100 ProvideX data server. BizNet does not support installing it on a different server because of the difficulty getting that configuration working. On the server, you'll create a shared directory. The BizContent installer must then be installed and run. On the client, BizInsight must be installed and then verified. Plus, if you are installing system connectors, you would also need to install BizInsight Desktop Edition. I'm now ready to start the installation demonstration, but before I do have one final comment. The values you see entered during the installation will not be appropriate for your environment. Please make sure you enter values that exist in your environment. I'm currently logged on to my Sage 100 ProvideX server. If you've not done so, download the installation files from the BizNet Software portal site. You can get to the portal site by going to www.biznetsoftware.com. Once there, click on Community and then click on the Partner Portal link. If you do not have a login to the site, please contact customer care at biznetsoftware.com to request a login. You can find the install files under BizNet Software. I'm going to click on my BizInsight link to download BizInsight and show you where the license file for BizInsight can be found. Click on the hyperlink to download the software. To locate the BizInsight license file, click on the License Keys tab. Click on the License and Download Center to get back to the list of products. BizNet Software is moving to a new license method. Currently, the BizInsight Desktop Edition and BizBroadcast products use the new licensing method. You can tell a product that uses the new license method because of the FNE at the end of the product name. To find the license, or what is now being called Activation ID, go to Order History on the left. All of your orders will be displayed. There may be several listed, and you may have to open a few of them to locate your activation IDs. When you open an order with a product that uses the new license method, you'll see an activation code column to the right and the activation ID listed below. I recommend copying the IDs into a notepad document and storing them with the installation files. I've already downloaded my install files to a folder on the desktop of the server and extracted the contents of the zips. We'll begin by installing the GL content. I'll go to my Install Files folder on my desktop and browse into the GL content folder and run the setup.exe. The installer will check for prerequisites that must be installed beforehand and will install any that are missing. These prerequisites might require a reboot of the server, so be sure to plan accordingly. As you can see, my server is missing a few things. I'll get those installed and we'll resume this video at that point. Once all the prerequisites are installed, go back and run the setup.exe for the content installer again. Click Next at the welcome screen. Read through the End User License Agreement, and if you accept the terms, click the I accept checkbox and then click Next. By default, the content will be installed to C program files, or on 64-bit servers, C program files x86. Choose the Custom button to change this default directory or turn off the creation of any shortcuts. I'm not going to change anything and I'm going to stay with typical. Click Install. When the installation completes, an icon will be placed on the desktop. If you chose not to create shortcuts, you'll need to browse to the directory to which the installation files were unpacked and run the file named bizcontentinstaller.exe. Double-click the desktop icon to start the content installation. When the main dialog opens, all the steps that will be performed are listed and shown with red X's by them. Click on the Automatic Install button to have the installer run through all the steps. The first dialog that opens is asking for the location of the configuration path. At this point, I'm going to create my BizInsight shared directory on this server and call it BizInsight Share. You can just use this directory for your share, or for more granular security control, you can create separate folders for the admin and config files, which is what I'm going to do. One more thing I'm going to do is go ahead and copy my BizInsight license file from my Install Files folder on my desktop into the admin subdirectory. Since the installer is wanting to know my configuration path, I'm now going to choose the config folder and click OK. If your server is 64-bit, the next dialog will open. What is being asked here is whether Sage is 32 or 64-bit. This is very important to answer correctly because it determines whether a 32-bit or 64-bit version of SQL is installed. The SQL bitness must match the Sage bitness. The content installer will check the server for existing SQL Server instances. If SQL is already installed on the server, BizNet recommends using the content installer to perform a side-by-side installation of a SQL Express instance. The advantage to this approach is that it will keep all BizContent elements separate from other production applications and allow maintenance activities to occur without impacting any other production applications. If you want to use an existing SQL instance, check the checkbox next to that instance name and click the Click Here to Use Selected Server. If your existing reporting services is running on a non-default port or is using SSL, use the Click Here to Override button to enter that information. Since I don't have SQL Server already installed, I will proceed with using the Content Installer to install SQL. The installer will download SQL Express and install it once the download completes. The next dialog to open is the Link Server Setup dialog. You'll work this dialog from left to right. Stage 1 and 2 should automatically be filled in for you. If they are not, please contact BizNet Software Support. In the Stage 3 section, enter a valid Sage 100 login that will be used by BizInsight to retrieve data. We highly recommend creating a login just for BizInsight use. The Stage 4 section just lets you specify what directory to create files in. I'll cover that in a moment. In Stage 5, you can control what companies are linked to BizInsight. Use one of the two Add buttons to add your companies to the Stage 6 list. The Choose OS type should be automatically set for you. The Registry Entries and Linked Servers sections provide the option to let the content installer create the ODBC data sources and linked servers for you, or create the files that you can use to create them yourself. These files will be created in the folder specified in the Stage 4 section. I'm going to create the files and run them myself to illustrate an issue that we've been seeing in some environments. When ready, click on the Start Process button. Because Create File is selected from the Registry, Entries, and Linked Server options, a prompt will pop up asking you to confirm that you will run the resulting output files created by the content installer later. Click Yes. The next dialog to open will be the Content Deployment dialog. This dialog will be automatically filled in for you. If you are using an existing SQL Server installation, adjust the server name field to your SQL Server and instance name. You do not need to change the database name field or the authentication method. SQL authentication is not supported with Sage 100 ProvideX. Once this dialog is complete, click on the Deploy Content button. If you haven't made any changes to the data source section, this pop-up will occur. That's okay if you're using a SQL version installed by the content installer. Just click Yes. Once the dataset content has been deployed, a dialog will open showing both the report server and the report manager URLs. Click Close. The installation will continue and you will see green check marks appearing beside the steps. The License Administration dialog will open next, where you will assign BizInsight user types to the end users. Click on the Browse button and browse to the directory that contains the BizInsight license file. Click on Validate License to confirm that the license is valid. If no error occurs, click on the Configure Users button. I'm going to add 2 users, a designer and viewer user. Make sure to precede the logins with the domain name. Once finished, click on the Commit Changes button. A dialog will open giving you the option to allow the content installer to also give the appropriate permissions to the reporting services site, the BizContent SQL metadata databases, as well as folder and share permissions for the shared directory. Click Yes to this message. The next dialog that opens is the Configuration Tool dialog. This dialog allows you to create an app.config file with default settings for all users. The key fields should already be completed for you, like the location of the SQL metadata databases and the UNC paths to the admin and configuration paths. There are 2 settings that I want to point out. First, on the General tab, the Content Path Override section allows you to specify a different directory for BizInsight to use if your user profiles are remapped to network directories instead of to a local hard drive location. This is very important to change because BizInsight will copy the BizContent add-in files to this user's profile directory, and if that directory is in a network location, the BizContent add-ins will not function correctly. To change this setting, just select the Use the Directory Below radio button and type in an alternate directory that is local and known to exist. I recommend using C BizInsight, which is the default directory that BizInsight will be installed to on the client workstation. The second option to consider adjusting is on the Performance tab. The query timeout setting defaults to 200 seconds, but if your company has a lot of transactions each month, or your Sage 100 system has many years of data, it may be important to increase this value to avoid timeouts occurring when retrieving data. One thing I do want to mention is that timeout errors that occur for Sage 100 ProvideX customers are almost always caused by a problem with the login ID that is being used by BizInsight to retrieve data. Often the account has been deleted or the password for the account has been changed. This is another reason why we recommend creating an account specifically for BizInsight use, because it is less likely to be changed. Once you have finished with the Configuration Tool dialog, click the Configure Now button to save the changes. When the installation is complete, the Content Installer will display all of the information relevant for the BizInsight client installation. These paths can be copied to the clipboard using the Copy to Clipboard button. Click Close to close this dialog. All of the steps should now show green check marks next to them. If you ever need to see those paths again, click on the relevant information link in the upper right corner. We now need to run the files that were created by the Content Installer. In the C drive, there are 2 files, a create-linked-server.sql file and a create-odbc-datasources.reg file. I'm going to open the .reg file and work with it first. Once in the file, turn on Word Wrap from the View menu if it isn't already on. As mentioned earlier, there is an issue that some of our customers have been running into, and I want to show you what to look for and correct if needed. I know that the information in this file is hard to read, but look for the path to the pvxodbc.dll in this file and check it. The issue customers are running into is the path will only have a single backslash instead of a double backslash in front of the pvxodbc.dll file name. Here's a screenshot of an example.reg file that has the backslash missing. If your file is missing the backslash, just do a search for and replace within the file to get the extra backslash added. Once you've checked the file and fixed it if necessary, save your changes and then double-click the .reg file to run it. Next, I'll start SQL Management Studio to run the SQL script. Once Management Studio is open, drag and drop the SQL script in. Then click the Execute button on the toolbar. You will see commands completed successfully in the message window. There's one other thing I want to show you. Our Sage 100 content comes with some report templates that can be helpful tools for learning how to build your own reports. These templates are designed to use the ABC Demo Company though. If you do not have an ABC Demo Company and try to use one of the templates, it can cause problems. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to create a linked server for the ABC Company to allow these report templates to work without having to install the demo data. To do this, expand Server Objects on the left. Expand Linked Servers and see if there is a mass90_ABC entry. If one exists, you don't need to do this step. If one does not exist, right-click on the Linked Servers node and choose New Linked Server. Type mass90_ABC for the linked server name field. Choose OLEDB for ODBC drivers from the provider drop-down list. Then type in mass90_ followed by a 3-character company code that does exist. Repeat the same information for the data source field and then click OK. Close SQL Management Studio. At this point, we have completed the installation of the General Ledger Content Pack. We'll run through installing the System Connectors Content Pack next. Browse to the directory that contains the installation files for the System Connectors Content Pack and double-click the setup.exe. The options presented are similar to what you saw for the GL Content Pack. Choose whatever options you prefer. Double-click the new desktop icon to start the content installation. The Content Installer dialog will open. You'll notice that most of the steps already have green check marks next to them. You can click on the Automatic Install button to begin the installation, but it will launch the Admin Tool and Config Tool, which you may or may not need to touch. If all you need to do is the content deployment, just use the manual step buttons. Click on the Deploy Dataset Content button first. As before, the fields will be automatically completed for you. Just do a quick visual inspection to make sure the data source is correct. Click on Deploy Content when ready. Once the dataset content has been deployed, a dialog will open showing both the report server and the report manager URLs. Click Close. Click on the Deploy Metadata button next. You'll be prompted for the configuration path, but it should already be filled in for you, so just click OK. Finally, click on the Deploy Function Content button. Click OK to the configuration path prompt. Once the installer is complete, click Exit. I'm now finished with the installation of the server. Before I switch to the client workstation to do my installation there, I like to move my install files into my BizInsight share directory and make sure they are shared out. The content installer will take care of sharing the admin and configuration paths, but I'll have to take care of sharing the install files folder myself. I'm going to share this folder out to just administrators, but that is entirely your decision. I don't have a domain, so I won't keep the domain admins group in this dialog. I'm now ready to install BizInsight on the client workstation, so I will switch to that environment. I'm now on the client workstation logged in as one of my BizInsight users. This user is not a member of the administrators group. BizInsight 5.0 does not require users to be administrators. However, they do need to be able to install the product. If your company uses group policy to restrict users' abilities to install software, you will need to install the product as an administrator and then register it while logged in as the end user. Users must have rights to write to their HKeyCurrentUser registry hive. First, I'll browse to my share on the server. Then I'll browse to the Install Files folder. Go into the BizInsight folder and then open the folder that corresponds with the Excel version installed on the workstation and double-click the setup.exe. One important note here is that as of BizInsight version 5035.2, there is only a single setup.exe and MSI file. In that instance, just run the setup.exe. The installation will start. At the end of the installation, you'll be asked whether you want to use centrally managed settings or user-managed settings. This is where the app.config file that was created by the content installer comes in handy. Leave centrally managed selected and click OK. Either click on the Browse button to browse to the configuration path, or cheat like I do and copy and paste the path into the path field and then click OK. The installer will copy the app.config file from the configuration path and place it in BizInsight's directory structure. Remember, this app.config file has all the important paths and configuration information saved in it. Click Close when the installation finishes. The installation isn't complete until we start Excel once. The first time Excel is started after BizInsight is installed, a process called Scan for Content runs. This process copies the BizContent add-in files from the shared configuration path to the user's local profile directory and ensures that they are registered within Excel. Click OK when the dialog pops up indicating that Scan for Content completed. We're now ready to go into Excel and verify the installation. Open Excel and click on the BizInsight tab on the ribbon. When you first click on the BizInsight tab after an install, the navigation pane will often load automatically. To load BizInsight properly going forward, you'll need to click on the BizInsight tab and then click on the BizInsight Explorer button. Enter a valid company ID, year, and period into a cell. Go to the navigation pane, expand the GL node, expand functions, expand month to date, and drag and drop a month to date net function. When the function arguments dialog opens, select each of your input parameters. Once the required parameters have been supplied, BizInsight will go retrieve the data. When you see an amount returned, that indicates that the data retrieval was successful. If you click OK and close the function arguments dialog and see pound value in the cell, something went wrong and you'll need to troubleshoot your installation. Once you have a function that retrieves data, save your report somewhere so you can use it to verify your other BizInsight installations. We'll do the Desktop Edition installation next. Open the Desktop Edition directory in the Installs folder and run the setup.exe. The Desktop Edition installer will first download and install the BizNet API. This installation requires administrative rights, so if the user does not have admin rights, you'll be prompted for administrative credentials. Enter those credentials and click OK to continue. I'm now going to go into Excel, activate Desktop Edition, and then verify that it works. Click on the Activate button on the BizInsight DE tab. Locate your activation ID and paste it into the Activation IDs field. Then click Activate IDs. You'll get a message that the activation succeeded. If it doesn't succeed, make sure the workstation has internet access. If it does have internet access, contact BizNet Software Support for further help. Now the Desktop Edition is activated, I want to test that it works. To do this, I'm going to go to the navigation pane and choose one of the system connector analysis sets. This analysis set wants a company code and a start and end date. After entering those values, the data will be retrieved. Then I'll click on the Select Data button on the Desktop Edition ribbon, choose my analysis set, and then click Next. I don't need to change any of my data types, so I'll click Next. Now I'm going to click on the FX Query Data button and create a function off of that data set. I'll choose my data set from the drop-down list. I want to sum the data, so I'll pick Sum from the action list. And I want to sum line sales amount, so I'll choose that from the next pick list. In the filter grid, I'm going to choose Customer Name and filter on a specific customer. Then click OK. I'm asked where I want to put my function. I'm going to click OK to accept the current cell. At this point, I have finished my end-to-end installation. I would like to show you the steps you need to take if the user does not have rights to install on their workstation and BizInsight had to be installed by a user with the rights to perform installations. We'll use this same environment and switch to a different user. I'm now logged in as my friend Albert Einstein. If I go into Excel, I won't see BizInsight. While the product is installed, the registry entries are under the HKey Current User Registry hive of the user who performed the installation. To get BizInsight registered for this user, we need to run a batch file that is located in the reg5 subdirectory of the folder where BizInsight was installed. The reg5 directory contains several files that are used to register and unregister BizInsight. I want to run the registerondemand.bat file. If user account control is enabled on the workstation, running this file might return an error. In that case, you need to edit the file and add the path to the reg5 directory for both of the regedit.exe entries, which I'll demonstrate. Right-click on the file and choose Edit. Use Notepad to edit the file. Copy the path to the reg5 directory and paste it in front of the two regedit lines. Be sure to add the backslash at the end of the path. Save your changes and close the file. Double-click the file to run it. You'll be prompted to allow the registry to be updated. Click Yes and OK until finished. Let's go into Excel now and confirm that BizInsight is now showing up for our user. Unlike what we saw when we started BizInsight after installing, the Scan for Content process does not automatically run. We need to go to the BizInsight tab and click on the Scan for Content button to initiate that process. You'll be prompted about whether to pick up new settings from the configuration path. Unless you know you have changes to pick up, click No. Scan for Content will close Excel. Once it completes, click OK. Let's go back into Excel and verify the installation. Don't forget to load BizInsight properly by clicking on the BizInsight tab and then BizInsight Explorer. I want to test that the installation works, so I'll type in my input parameters and then drag and drop a month-to-date net function. Notice that when I do that, I get an error. This is because Albert is set up as a viewer user. I can check his rights in the About dialog. Viewer users cannot use functions. To verify this user's installation, we need to open the workbook we saved to the configuration path and refresh it. To refresh the report, right-click anywhere and choose BizNet Refresh. When the refresh is complete, a dialog will open saying how long the refresh took. Click OK to close the message, and then check the cell containing the function to confirm that it contains data. As long as the cell contains an amount and not an error such as pound value, this installation is confirmed to be functional. Now that BizInsight is verified to be working, I need to get Desktop Edition installed. Unlike BizInsight, there isn't a batch file that can be run. I simply need to run the Desktop Edition installer for my user. I'll browse back out to my install files shared directory and run the setup.exe for Desktop Edition. Since this user doesn't have admin rights, I need to enter an administrative user's password to proceed with the installation. Click Finish when the installation completes. I'll go back into Excel and check that Desktop Edition is now showing up. As you can see in Excel, I've got the tab for Desktop Edition. I'll need to activate this installation and test it just like I did for my other user to confirm that it's fully functional. This concludes our video. In this video, I've demonstrated how to install BizInsight and BizContent on the server and client workstation and have successfully retrieved data. I hope that this video helps you achieve a smooth BizInsight and BizContent installation. Thank you for your time.